The Mediterranean sun cast its golden glow over Fort Brégançon, the historic French presidential summer residence perched above the azure waters of the Côte d'Azur. It was here, against this iconic backdrop, that French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed German Chancellor Friedrich Merz for an encounter that both leaders framed as a moment of unity, symbolism and strategic alignment at a time when Europe faces mounting crises. The meeting, held at the 17th century fortress in Bourg-les-Mimosas, carried more than ceremonial weight. It was intended to reaffirm the Franco-German partnership as the backbone of the European project and to signal to allies and rivals alike that Paris and Berlin remain committed to steering the continent through turbulent times, from economic headwinds to the ongoing war in Ukraine. As cameras rolled, Macron and Merz walked side by side toward the press, their steps deliberate, their body language carefully coordinated to convey harmony. The two leaders, accompanied by members of their delegations, shook hands and exchanged warm greetings before taking their seats at a long table adorned with the flags of France, Germany and the European Union. The atmosphere was unmistakably cordial, but the message was serious. Both leaders were aware that this was not merely a diplomatic courtesy call. With Europe facing questions of defence, sovereignty and economic resilience, the symbolism of their meeting was meant to echo well beyond the tranquil Mediterranean coast. President Macron, who spoke first, wasted no time in highlighting the stakes. His words carried both urgency and confidence, aimed at demonstrating that France and Germany were not only aligned but ready to lead. Emmanuel Macron said, "I believe that the Franco-German partnership today is perfectly aligned to build a stronger Europe economically, commercially, monetarily, but also a Europe that maintains its geopolitical position in the Ukraine conflict in the face of the war of aggression launched by Russia, and a Europe that also faces its challenges and has decided to rearm itself to ensure its protection." Macron's statement was both sweeping and direct. He positioned the Franco-German axis as central not only to Europe's internal cohesion, but also to its credibility on the global stage. The emphasis on rearming underscored France's push for greater European defence autonomy, an issue that has gained momentum since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. For Macron, this was also an opportunity to reaffirm his long-standing vision of strategic sovereignty, a Europe less dependent on external powers, particularly the United States, for its security. His remarks suggested that the war in Ukraine had accelerated the urgency of this agenda, forcing Europe to confront what he has often described as an era of existential choices. Chancellor Friedrich Merz, newly elected earlier in the year and still consolidating his role on the European stage, followed Macron with equal conviction. His remarks highlighted continuity with Germany's historical commitment to the Franco-German relationship, while also extending the message to the broader European family. Friedrich Merz said, "As German Chancellor, I place great importance on the German-French friendship. This is an axis, this is a foundation of Europe, but there are still 25 other member states in this European Union that also look to us and can rely on the fact that everything we are doing here, we want to do together with all other members of the European Union. Then we are truly strong." Merz's choice of words, axis and foundation, deliberately invoked the language of European unity, but with a balancing note. While affirming the centrality of the Franco-German partnership, he emphasized inclusivity, signaling that Berlin does not wish to appear as though it and Paris dictate the terms of European policy to the rest of the Union. This was an important nuance. Merz, leading a coalition government that has promised pragmatism and consensus, sought to project Germany as both a reliable partner to France and a cooperative leader within the EU's 27-member framework. His tone reflected Germany's long-standing instinct for moderation, particularly in times of geopolitical tension. Later, Merz added a personal touch, expressing his admiration for the French president's summer residence, a fortress that has long been a symbol of French power and history. Friedrich Merz said, "I am very pleased that we have the opportunity to do this here tonight in this wonderful place. Brégançon is a highly esteemed and much appreciated place, even in Germany, and the fact that the French president has such a place as his summer residence is truly enviable, but we are glad that we are allowed to be here." His light-hearted comment drew smiles and underscored the friendly rapport between the two leaders. While symbolic, these gestures of warmth matter in diplomacy. They serve to soften the harder edges of political negotiations and remind audiences, both domestic and international, that personal chemistry can still play a role in statecraft. Behind the cordial exchanges, however, lay urgent strategic questions. The war in Ukraine continues to shape every aspect of European policy, from defence to energy to economics. Macron's reference to Europe's geopolitical position in the face of Russia's aggression made clear that both Paris and Berlin see their leadership as essential in sustaining support for Kyiv. The Franco-German partnership has long been tested by differing approaches to Russia. France has traditionally sought to keep channels of dialogue open, while Germany's reliance on Russian energy left it cautious in its responses until 2022 forced a dramatic policy shift. Today, both leaders appear determined to close ranks. By framing their partnership as perfectly aligned, Macron was not just describing the present moment, but making a deliberate assertion that Paris and Berlin will not allow internal divisions to weaken Europe's stance against Moscow. Merz, in turn, reinforced that unity must extend beyond the two capitals, binding together the entire European Union. Macron's emphasis on building a stronger Europe economically, commercially, monetarily, reflected the dual challenge Europe faces, managing internal growth while withstanding external pressures. Rising energy costs, inflationary concerns, and the threat of protectionist measures abroad have made economic coordination within the EU more critical than ever. The call for rearmament, meanwhile, highlighted Europe's shifting defence posture. Both France and Germany have announced increased defence spending since 2022, and their joint projects, from fighter jets to tanks, are seen as crucial to Europe's long-term security. Macron's remarks reinforce the idea that Europe is no longer content to rely exclusively on NATO, but is willing to chart a more autonomous path. The choice of Fort Brégançon was no accident. Overlooking the Mediterranean, the fortress has hosted countless state leaders and symbolises continuity of French power. By inviting Merz here, Macron not only extended a gesture of respect, but also visually tied the Franco-German partnership to the grandeur of European history. The timing of the meeting was also significant. Coming amid debates in Brussels over defence spending, enlargement and institutional reform, the Macron-Merz encounter was a calculated show of unity meant to reassure European partners and deter adversaries. The Franco-German relationship has not always been without friction. Disagreements over economic policy, energy strategies and foreign affairs have, at times, strained the partnership. Yet, as both leaders made clear, the ability to overcome those differences remains its greatest strength. By stressing alignment and friendship, Macron and Merz sought to project stability in a world where geopolitical volatility has become the norm. Their words, captured against the sunlit fortress walls of Brégançon, were intended as a reminder that, for all its challenges, the European project endures, anchored by the cooperation of its two largest powers. The meeting at Fort Brégançon was more than a summer summit. It was a deliberate act of political theatre, staged to reassure European citizens, signal resolve to allies, and send a message of deterrence to adversaries. Macron's declaration of perfect alignment, paired with Merz's emphasis on inclusivity and friendship, framed the Franco-German partnership as both a driver of European strength and a guarantor of its future. In the tranquil setting of the Côte d'Azur, the two leaders spoke with one voice, that Europe, though challenged, remains united, determined and ready to defend both its interests and its values.